Welcome back to another rig tutorial video. Today we're going to show you the corn aligner. As you can see here, we have a small hook, a piece of pop-up maize, and also we have a quarter kicker. I'm using this instead of shrink tubing just because it's easier to change out your colors. Then finally over here I have a small split shot and some tungsten putty just to hold it down in case it pops up. So the first thing I want to show you before we even start this rig is you want to take some hooks and put on the corn ahead of time just so you can see how they balance. So I'll show you that right now. Okay, before we can even start this rig, we want to test it out a little bit. Right now I'm using size 6 quarter cranks and the wide gapes. As you can see, they're pretty much the same weight, but the difference is the two that are on the bottom, that one and that one, those are using regular pop-up corn from Corda, and the other two, that one and that one, are using the pop-up maize. Now you can see it's enough just to balance the hook that it's just about ready to go off the bottom, but it's not really floating it. So it's a good way to mess around with this. Like let's say you change down to size 8, well then the pop-up corn would probably balance the hooks that are now laying on the side on the bottom. And then same with the pop-up maize. If you change to say a size 8, well now it would actually go off the bottom. So, or even if you want to fish off the top. This is very versatile. You can fish on the bottom. You can fish that it's just popped up a little off the bottom, just barely hovering, or you can actually pop it up as high as you'd like to, depending on what size hook you use and also what kind of pop-up corn you use. So let's get back to the rig video and I'll explain more. Okay, just starting out with the accessories that you'll need. Choose your favorite kind of pop-up corn or maize, or if you use any other type of pop-up products. So you can see here the pop-up corn is a little bit smaller than the pop-up maize. That's a little bit larger in size, which will also be more buoyant. Next, hook selection is very important with this. I tried with both the crank and then the wide gape hooks, and they're actually the same weight when I put on the pop-up corn or pop-up maize. But test, like I said before, test it in the bowl with your favorite pop-up corn and then also your hooks. That way you can determine what you're going to do with this rig. Now I'm using the N-Trap Soft. I really like using this line. It's a coated braid. I actually stripped it a little bit back there, which you can see right there. But you can again choose whichever hook link material, or if you just want to use plain braid, it's up to you. Some of the other accessories I'm using, I have some split shots here. That's actually underneath the tungsten putty, and that's just going to pin it down if we choose to pop it off the bottom. Next, of course, we need some scissors. I have a tool to strip back the coated braid. If you're using regular braid, you won't need this. Whenever I'm tying like an overhand loop, it's always easier to use it with a baiting needle, so I'm using that. And last but not least, instead of using shrink tubing, I'm using the Corda kickers. That way you can just slide them on really easy. You don't have to mess around with steaming. That way if you're out in the bank and you want to carry along the extra kettle and propane and all that, you can just put one of these on. And I'm choosing yellow just to match the corn that we have. So let's get started. Okay, the first step, I prefer using the wide gapes when doing this, just because the shank is straight. It seems like it sits on the corn a little bit better, which you can see right here. Yeah, it sits a little bit flatter, looks a little bit more natural on the bottom. If you use more of a curved one, like the crank, it has a tendency to pop it up. The corn will sit kind of like that. It's up to you. Whatever you want to use, it's totally fine. Next, we're going to take off probably about 14 inches of the end trap. Again, this is up to you which you want to use. and however long you want to make this rig. Cut off a section, and now I'm going to strip this back. I feel it ties a little bit easier if you strip it back, so we're going to do that right now. I'm going to take off roughly 3 inches of the coating. It just makes it a little bit easier to get through the eye of the hook, which I'll show you next. Okay, the next step, we're basically going to tie on your favorite knot of choice. I'm going to use a polymer just because it's a little bit easier to do, and it's a really strong knot. I'm going to put up a link up in the corner here just so you can see how to tie one of those if you have never tied one before. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this right now. I'm just going to do this quick. Again, if you don't know how to tie one, I'll have another link up in the upper right corner how to tie one of these, so you can learn how to do that. Since this is going to be a little bit tricky to do, trying to get the knots through, I like to use the baiting needle. It's a little bit easier to pull everything through. Okay, now that I have that done, it's a little bit tricky trying to tie it in front of me. Next step, I'm just going to slide on the kicker. You're just trying to match up the size with whatever hook you're using. It just slides up over the knot. It just slides down the shank of the hook a little bit. Really easy to do. And you can see the aggressive angle that'll kick over in the fish's mouth and hook you a fish. Next step, we're going to pull out a piece of the pop-up maize. Again, I just want this one to balance off the bottom a little bit. If I wanted it to pop up, I'd probably do maybe a size 8. That way it's going to sit off the bottom like that. Now, I'll show you real quick on the rig because I really didn't explain that before. If we use the pop-up corn, it's just going to sit on the side like that. With the maize, it's actually going to sit like that just on the bottom. And if I'd use a smaller size hook, say an 8, it would hover above like that. And that's why we would need the tungsten putty and also the split shot. So it's very versatile, and you can also fish this surface fishing. You just wouldn't add any weight. Use a small hook and then the maize, and then you would be able to surface fish and just float along and stalk some fish. Okay, so back to the rig. When you look at the maize, you can see this part here is going to be the heaviest because it's the widest. So all we're going to do is ensure that this sits in the front of the hook. You're going to start by pulling the hook down through this section right here. And you just want to go barely underneath the surface. You don't want to really go deep into it because we need to pull that hook up back through. I'm going to go down probably about 3/4 of the way, right to where the bend of the hook starts, and then we're just going to slide it back up through like so. And all you have to do is push it back to where your kicker starts, and that's it. Very simple to do. Now this would be perfect as is if you're just going to fish on the bottom. Because we're using the maize, it'll sit like that on the bottom. Like I said, if you use the corn in a size 6, it'll lay sideways like that. Either way, it's going to produce some fish for you. And as soon as the carp goes and inhale this into the mouth, because we have an aggressive kicker on, it's going to flip over really quick. Okay, so back here, let's say we're going to use a size 8, and this is going to sit off the bottom. Well, obviously, with no weight here, it's just going to go up like that. So what we're going to do, I have it stripped back here, then I have the coating right there. I'm going to add a split shot. And again, use whichever one you see fit, which one you like to use. I like these little water gremlin ones. They seem to work really good for me. And we're just going to put that on. Or try to anyhow. It keeps rolling away from me. And put it right where the coating meets the uncoated. Just pinch that on, and I'll hit it with the pliers real quick just to make sure it's not going to come off. Okay. Now, if you have a shot that's colored, they'll match the bottom, you're fine. Even like that, you should be fine. Unless you're really going after some bigger fish, then I would definitely conceal everything just so it doesn't stand out. And that's where like the tungsten putty comes into play. You just need a small piece, you know, nothing major. And you're just going to put that around the shot. That's just going to make it blend into the bottom. That way the only thing standing out is going to be your maize that's popped off the bottom a little bit. So I go ahead and smooth that around. And we're good. Finally, we're just going to finish this off. You can do an overhand loop, figure of 8 knot, you know, whichever you prefer. I'm just going to do an overhand loop real quick. And then you can tie that on, or not so much tie it on, put onto your bolt rig, or whichever selection you choose. Again, you didn't see me wet down the knots in this video, but always wet your knots. The polymer knot, the overhand loop, and whatever you choose. Okay, so that's basically it. Simple enough, right? So this will get you some nice fish. Again, the putty split shot's optional. Right now, I know the maize and this hook, this size hook, it's not going to come off the bottom, but it's still probably a good idea to put it there maybe, especially if it's a windy day. That current might have a tendency to lift it off the bottom a little bit. So it'll definitely pin it down. And with the maize, it's just going to sit like that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about this rig, please let me know. And we'll be having lots more videos to come. Thanks for watching and hit subscribe.